So wonderful to see you, girl.
It's so great to see you, Barbara.
For everybody who is watching this, Megan is an author and a writing coach for people with bold ideas, not just the wimpy ones, but she can help you get from wimpy to bold. She helps entrepreneurs put their expertise into words, and she helps authors plan, draft, and revise their books. How's it going in your world, Megan?
Oh, really good. I'm liking this new year so far. I'm really enjoying 2019. I feel like it's got a flow to it.
It does have a flow, and it also has some excitement. What projects
Yeah.
are you working on?
Well, my first project of the year was actually creating a revising course. So I took materials that I've used with authors in coaching to revise their books.
Uh-huh.
And I put it into a self-study course. And it's one of those things that seems so dry. It seems so boring, right? Because it's kind of just processes and checklists and do this first and do this next. But the joy in it and the feedback I've been getting from people is that it's just helping them then to be free. And this is a theme I find coming up again and again in writing coaching, is that having the right constraints, having a certain number of rules or a structure allows you to be free. So I hear from so many authors, they go to begin revising a book and they don't know where to start. And maybe they'll just begin slashing or erasing or going, oh, I have to rewrite the whole thing. And they'll maybe even start over from the beginning. And it was really powerful to create something that I know gives people this framework and enough of a structure so they can actually successfully revise without rewriting the whole thing or deleting the whole thing or just shoving it in a drawer out of frustration. So that was a really satisfying project that I was glad to get up. And
we humans are very much like that, aren't we? We
yep.
need a structure to push against or to help our energies focus so that we get where we want to go.
Yes, and especially for people who are really creative, who tend to have a lot of ideas, it can be kind of overwhelming in the same way. This image pops into my mind of, when a small child has a tantrum and then becomes overwhelmed with the emotion, like it's actually frightening. Right?
Yes.
It's scary to feel things that big. And fortunately, I think most of the time for creative people, it's not unpleasant feelings, but even big creative feelings, even big good feelings can be scary to hold inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're creative and you get all of these ideas and you go, I need something to help me carry such big ideas. The ideas required for writing a book, as you know, are immense.
Yeah.
So having something where you can have help supporting all those ideas, then the bigness is not just up to you.
It's not overwhelming.
Yeah.
Actually, that's the concept behind the 31-day good vibe challenge as well.
Oh.
Structure. So we're not always working in isolation. We have support. Most of us know about vibration. We know that emotions have vibrations and that emotions most often are a response to the thoughts we're having. And, in the example that you've just given us for writers, I've experienced this firsthand. Oh my gosh, there's so much. Where do I even start? And I'm alone and I can't tell if this is any good or if it's just a bunch of,
So, absolutely. Yeah.
It comes to something that's even a little bit more esoteric, like vibration. People kind of go, huh? So that's the whole point of inspiring each other and hanging with people who have the same goals and intentions.
Nice.
This is going to be an exciting process, a whole month of really focusing on keeping our vibrations high, which incidentally means helping us feel better.
I love it. Yeah.
Yes. And then being a conduit for this light going out into the world, for these high vibrations going out into the world. You know, we're the drop of water rippling in the pond, and these ripples go out because every one of us is a light being who is an antenna for the light coming into the planet.
I love it. Yes, that image of an antenna is so powerful. And it's two-way, right? It's so you want to receive what's coming in, and then you want to broadcast good stuff going back out.
And you know, we want to have a little bit of editing capability in the vibration we send out, because you know, when we're down in the dumps, that's contagious too.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do we inspire ourselves? And of course, the very word inspire means to bring in and to breath. So it's really exciting. Tell us a little bit about how you nurture your connection to Source.
Well, what you just said about inspiring, I take very literally. I like to start the day with a gentle yoga practice. And there are a couple of different practitioners I follow. And so sometimes I'll do some hatha yoga and sometimes some yin yoga and sometimes a combination. And what I'm focused on during that practice is breath, is really moving with breath. And the practitioners I follow are all about that connection. And so it becomes kind of a moving meditation. And I like to just go into their channels and find something that speaks to me for the day, you know, a title, and I go, oh, I think I need that. So
it's a wonderful resource, isn't it?
It's really lovely. And today is when we're recording anyway, is the new moon. And so this morning I did new moon yoga. And that lends itself really nicely into starting the day with intention and starting with breath. And I noticed that during my yoga practice, I feel very connected. I feel like there's plenty of time. And then often what will happen is I'll get off the mat, I'll go start the day, and suddenly think, oh, I got to do this and this and this and this and this. And so my practice right now is taking yoga throughout my day, taking that breath, taking the inhale and exhale, taking that sense that there is plenty of time, that I'm always exactly where I need to be. And then, of course, once my body is calm, it calms my mind. And then all of a sudden I open up and go, oh yeah, hello, I'm not alone. Oh, hi.
Which is a much better feeling.
Yeah. Hello, beautiful universe. So that's my main way to connect. I find that that's the winning combination for me. Breath goes to body, goes to calming my mind, goes to opening me up and making me feel really grounded. But often I will also sit in meditation and just visualize the strength of earth coming up through me and the freedom of sky coming down. And I imagine I'm like I don't know what it is, a transistor, a diode. I'm absorbing the energy from both places and being then a conduit for it. And that feels really, really good. So as somebody who is very much in her head, who thinks a lot, who has lots of ideas swirling, it's incredibly powerful for me to slow down, connect with my breath, connect with my body, connect to the earth. And then Source is like, well, hello, where have you been? I've been here hoping to hang out with you.
Yes. So can you describe the sensations in your body when you forget and then when you bring yourself back to the breath and your body?
Yeah. It feels like a kind of tunnel vision. So, and I know that that's what we get when we're in fight, flight, or freeze mode, right? As soon as our nervous system goes into that panic, our vision narrows because our bodies evolved to be able to run in a straight line away from a saber-toothed tiger, right? It's very useful if there's a physical danger, a life-threatening danger. But it just feels as if things are smaller. They're narrower. might butt my head up against ideas or up against situations and feel like I don't know how to solve them. Even very minor things like, oh, I've double booked myself, or, I haven't left enough time to get from one appointment to the next. Oh no, how will I fix this? And when I come back into expanded thinking, it becomes so obvious. It's like, oh, all I have to do is email one person and say, does it work for you to start half an hour later? It's like, oh, that was so easy. That was so not a dangerous situation. But my vision really opens up and expands when I get that reconnection. I also find myself just laughing, just joyful, just feeling like it's a party and I'm always invited.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense.
You're both the hostess and the guest of honor.
Ah, I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right, because in fear, we get paralyzed and we forget to breathe. I had to work on this so much during my whole life. And that's enough just to bring us back into our body.
Yes.
Which is so critical, because it's the physical being that allows us to be powerful in the world.
Yeah.
Can you describe an instance or a series of instances of how your spiritual work has affected your life's journey?
Oh, yeah. I've got some from pretty recent, actually. So a few years ago, I did a business coaching program, and part of it was doing this daily journal. And, then the program ended and I continued the journal for a while and just forgot about it. There wasn't a point where I decided not to do it anymore, but it just fell off. Life got busy. And recently I was cleaning out a ton of papers and found some old notebooks and journals and went, oh, wait, here's that great business journal, those questions. So last week I began it again and began asking these questions. And they are questions that invite you to tune in. I mean, it's for your business, but it's really about how do you want to show up in the world, and how do you want to feel about your business, and how are you using your business to create this kind of energy you're talking about, this being that. And so I began doing these questions. Now, of course, when you pay attention to something, you notice it a lot more in the world, right? So if you've just bought a hatchback, then you look around and go, I never knew how many hatchbacks there were on the road. Right. So here I am doing my journal in the morning. One of the questions is, what's evidence that you're on the right track, right? So you start noticing and writing down, and I'm going, oh, this and this. And I start realizing these synchronicities are just flooding through my life, including being at the grocery store and running into somebody I haven't seen in a few years who had moved out of the area and just recently moved back, but somebody who is this very powerful woman, a very wonderful presence. And I thought, she's just not in the area. I won't be able to connect. And bam, the universe brought her back to me. And I was able to connect with some people in indie writing and publishing who are presenting ideas that I'm exactly ready for right now. Okay. But I don't think I would have noticed them. I wouldn't have said yes to the conversation, and I might not even have noticed them had I not been focused on what are the signs I'm getting from the universe that I am moving in the right direction. So it's this neat circle where I'm instigating and then the universe gives me input, and then I take that and do something with it, and we go around again toward more clarity and focus about, good directions for me to go in my business. Yeah, exactly. But it's that paying attention, and down to things where I turn on the iPad and there's a notice that says, oh, there's a new episode of such and such podcast. And I go, I bet I'm meant to listen to that right now. And I click on it, and sure enough, it's exactly the ideas that are reinforcing what I've been thinking about and what I need to do. So here I am about a week into starting up with this journaling activity again. And I have kind of now seen the vision for the whole rest of my year in my business.
Beautiful.
Yes. Yeah, which is lovely. And I spent the first couple months of the year just being open and saying, I'm not going to force, we were talking earlier about structure, and I said, well, I know right now I'm going to keep my small scale structure, doing my daily practices that help me be open, but I hadn't imposed any large structure yet because I was waiting to hear that message of like, where is the next direction? Where will I go next where I'll just flow? And then all of a sudden in 1 week it opens up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is something I'd like for us to dig into a little bit, because you're talking about synchronicities, and I want everybody listening to understand that synchronicities are all these tiny coincidences that are actually small miracles. And they're one of the signs that you're in flow. So can you describe what being in flow means to you? I mean, you've already touched on it. It's that, I'm going to be quiet and let you talk.
I feel it in terms of ideas coming across my radar. I'll be reading a book that I've been reading. It's not as if I went, oh, I'm thinking about this, so I'll go start reading that book. I'll just have started reading a book. I'll have this clarity from some other part of my life that comes through meditation maybe, and then I will read exactly that idea in the book. It was already there, but it was, oh my goodness, it feels like you're saying like a miracle, as if it was just made especially for me to deliver the message I needed to hear right then. And I get it very strongly physically. Just talking to you right now, I get this lightness. I often get chills throughout my body. I get, now this is interesting because I actually am a recovered cynic and skeptic, Barbara. I don't know if you know this about me. So I went through my mother is a healer and a yoga practitioner and a massage practitioner and a Reiki practitioner. So I grew up with these ideas of energy. And so my teenage rebellion was becoming very rational, very opposed to energy and connection and anything like this, right? That was my teenage rebellion. And then I went to college and studied philosophy and came at these ideas from a different way, and eventually came around. And now I say to my mother on a regular basis, Mom, you were right about everything. So my discovery of my connection with the universe happened just really organically. It was kind of me returning to something that before it felt so big. It felt overwhelming. And I felt scared, thinking I had to know everything. I had to know the nature of the universe. I don't know where I got that idea, but that was very frightening. So I turned away from it and said, well, no, there's just nothing beyond what we can, touch, and that's it. And then I'm not responsible for diving into that really deep stuff. Well, the really deep stuff came and found me in this gentle way, and I kind of waded in one step at a time. And so now when I'm in flow, one of the feelings I get is this, not laughing at myself in a mean way, but kind of laughing near myself, where it's like, oh, Megan, you can let go. You don't have to push so hard. You don't have to struggle so hard. So when I return to flow, I get that feeling of relief that there's energy supporting me. And I can kind of go, oh yeah, that's me trying to do everything myself and be very stubborn, and like, okay, yeah, I can relax. So it's this lovely kind of tingly, laughy, oh yeah, now I remember feeling. It's a recollection.
Absolutely. I feel it almost like there's little tiny champagne bubbles in my blood.
Yes, I know that feeling.
Right?
Yep.
It's exciting. It's affirming, and
Mhm.
you've touched on something really profound. I think one of the things that weighs us down is this feeling that we are responsible for everything. And there's a way in which that's true because it's a
Mm.
holographic universe. But we don't have to carry that weight. We're only accountable for the knowledge that we have. All we have to do is be loving, compassionate beings, and then for ourselves, show up and just keep saying yes. The universe says, well, if you want this, are you willing to do this? And you go, oh, I really want that. I really want this new book out there. So yes, I am going to dig in and get to know people.
Yeah. I
I am
like I
put
like
myself
that
out there.
I like that difference between being responsible because that does resonate with me that and I accidentally started getting into a lot of Buddhist reading in the last few months. It wasn't said, oh, I'm going to learn about Buddhism, but just those tended to be the books that I was drawn to. And the idea that only I can be responsible for my experience in this world really resonates with me. But in what you were saying, I heard this lovely distinction between responsibility on the one hand and control on the other. So
Yes.
even though I am responsible for showing up and being me and being my best self and breathing,
Yes.
I am not expected to be in control of all of the things and trying to make sure everything works out well. And
Exactly.
that's the freeing part, to let go of the control.
Yes. And the beauty of it is when you let go of the control, but you also show up for yourself, the universe takes you step by step. We don't have to have a roadmap from where I am now to where I want to be, no matter whether that's tomorrow or 20 years from now.
Yeah.
The universe will guide us according to our soul's intention.
I love that. I have actually a more concrete example for what you asked about too, about what it's like to be in flow, especially in this creative context. Last year, I published 3 books, and one came about completely, I don't know, it felt like I didn't do anything to make it happen, that it just was pushed through. And the book is actually curriculum for upper elementary grades, and it combines writing and STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And it is inviting kids to tune in, to pay attention to the world, and solve a problem in the world using science, technology, engineering, and math.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, and also writing about it. And this project came about because the woman I co-authored it with is someone I've done writing coaching with, is just a business friend, and we would have these conversations where we were lighting each other up, and it was just, oh, that idea makes me think of this, and every time we would talk, there would be so much beautiful flow. Mm-hmm. And so at some point she said, there's this call for books. Do you want to write a book together? And I thought, write a book with you? That sounds like so much fun. Let's do this. Right. And from start all the way up through, making the final changes that the editor asked for, it just felt like flow. And it seemed so obvious. So looking back, it was, oh, of course, Jade and Megan would write this book together because it combines their strengths and it has this obviousness to it. But we didn't have that feeling of control. Okay, we're going to write a book and it's going to have this impact and it's going to be for these people and it'll be done by this time. It was just this natural, wonderful flow, and something that I wouldn't have necessarily put on a strategic plan. If I'd been making a strategic plan for the year and going, what will I do to grow my business as a writing coach and as an author, that I don't think I would have been able to come up with that idea on my own.
Right.
But that idea came to me, and all I had to do was say yes.
Exactly. Saying yes. Keep saying yes no matter what.
Yeah.
That is so profound. And that's exactly how the idea for this challenge came to me. I mean, it was inspiration. It was,
Mm.
all people need is support because they know what to do. They they have the intention inside. They know pretty much what their purpose is. But my experience, especially in the last year, is that the old way of doing business was to do it from your mind,
Yes.
which is very limited. If you do it from your heart and soul, that includes the mind and includes all the skills that you've developed in your life up to that point. But there's an ease
Yeah.
in the flow that is so different from, oh, I made this plan. Now I got to figure out how to make it work. And I have to do this, that, and the other. And then I'm so overwhelmed, I just quit. I make like a turtle and pull inside. The
Yeah.
flow, the ease, the knowing that the universe really will take you where you need to go in a much easier way if you just let it.
Right. If you become a willing participant instead of trying to constantly steer. And I talk with some writers who want to become authors or who have published something who say they regret publishing or they regret going down this path because they've taken something they used to love and turned it into an obligation or a chore or a job. And that's very heartbreaking to me. And depending on how the context, will try to invite them to reframe or ask what would it be like if you just, what would it feel like to just reconnect with that creativity? But I agree that the way we tell people about our businesses has this opportunity to change. And I think it's especially important for people who are doing very soul-centered creative work to get that message, because it won't just be that their business doesn't connect. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's very exciting when the powerful expertise they have reaches a wider audience. But I think for authors and for artists, there's even more at stake, because it's not just that they wouldn't reach the wider audience if they gave up on marketing, but they might even give up on their craft. They might even give up on letting the creativity flow through them. And that is, I think, a tragedy. So that, and you mentioned that people know and they might need inspiration. And Barbara, I think they may also need permission. I think what you're doing is really powerful in that you can say, hey, you can talk about business in the same breath as breathing, in the same breath as connecting to source, in the same breath as tuning into your purpose, your higher purpose. That's a growing wave. That wave is here. We're so hungry for that.
Yes.
But I think and permission might not be the right word, but an invitation. I think many people still do need an invitation, is that, hey, show up and be your complete self. Right. You don't have to show up and just be, I'm a serious business person.
Well, especially for creatives. I mean,
yeah.
Our effectiveness seems to be in direct proportion to our surrender and our playfulness.
Yes.
Like you were saying before, when it gets to be so serious and overwhelming, the fun goes out of it, and we're so stressed, and our vibration just goes down to the tubes. I mean, it's so sad. Whereas when we let go of expectations of how it's supposed to look, then the universe can surprise us with something even bigger and better than we dreamed.
Yes.
So one of the things I think is important is to keep clear on what our intention is to be in the world, our purpose as a human being. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I tend to think of intention not as I find it a little overwhelming to think what's my big intention overall for all time. And I have done some thought on that. I know certainly that my purpose is around helping people put bold and important ideas into words. I know that that's my calling and why I showed up this time around.
Yeah.
That's why they put me here. But or maybe why I chose to be here. But I resonate a lot more with intention in cycles. So I mentioned doing new moon yoga, and actually one of the things that's really connecting is one of the yoga practitioners I follow has a lunar yoga offering. And so it's about grounding yourself in those cycles and setting an intention on the new moon, and then planting seeds. Oh, who's that cutie?
Live recordings.
Oh.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
But so it's about, setting an intention and planting seeds and then taking the action and then harvesting and then releasing. Those are the phases of the moon. And that is very powerful for me because then I'm setting a new intention once every 28-day cycle. And then my intention gets to be just kind of checking in with, well, what's going on? What do I want more of? Is there anything I want less of and want to release? How do I want to feel right now? So when I set intentions and when I stay connected to them, it's really about for this shorter period of time in this cycle. And that feels really freeing because I don't get caught up in trying to come up with what is the one big intention that will be the perfect intention. I go, if it's not exactly right, in 28 days, I'll pick a new one. So
Exactly. Actually, you can pick a new one anytime you want to.
yes.
And particularly in these times when everything is changing so quickly, I don't know that any of us can have an overarching, this is my sole purpose for my whole life, unless it is such a basic thing. Say for myself, my intention is always to help people remember who they are and to claim their powers.
Yeah.
And there's so many different ways to do that. That's one of the things I love about books, because when you have an example of a character who goes through this process, then you can think, maybe I can apply that to my life. And you don't even have to work at it. It's just showing up and having fun.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it's important that we share our processes these days because we're all changing. The old rules don't, they never particularly worked well, and we're seeing the breakdowns. And this is a time where we need to consciously choose hope and action that moves in the direction of hope.
Yes.
We don't have to give up when things are crumbling. That's actually when there's more opportunities. Everybody, I think, pretty well knows that the Chinese character for change is the same as for opportunity.
I didn't know that. That's lovely to know. Keep in my back pocket of my mind.
And so whatever's happening around us that we don't like, we just creatively come up with a different state of being. You don't like hearing hateful things, love it up. Use hope. No, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And you keep doing that, and it shifts the way you're perceiving this whole thing.
Those 4 that you just mentioned, those have been huge in my journey. And one of the most beautiful lessons that I learned in the last few years is what forgiveness really means. I think it's one that's so hard to put accurately into words. It's really something when you feel it in your body, you go, oh, that's forgiveness. And it was around the lesson for me was around forgiving somebody and realizing it doesn't have to do with the other person. It has to do with my continuing to tell myself a certain story, right? As long as I don't forgive, I'm telling myself a story that's making me hold on to negative emotions.
Yes.
And forgiving means, oh, I release this. And I just recently did some pretty intense and wonderful forgiveness work with those four, I forgive you, I'm sorry, I love you, thank you, and got some clarity that just was uh, beautiful lessons and release that I never would have gotten by sitting and rationally thinking. Those messages don't come through when you go, oh, let me make a to-do list of what are the ways I need to feel different or be different. It's inviting in that that other voice, inviting in that wisdom that surrounds us, and being open and being vulnerable, and then all of a sudden things click. And it's that same satisfaction you get when you write a story, right? And you go, you didn't intend, and then you get to a point you go, oh wait, and then this character could do this, and then I go, oh, and it fits together like a beautiful puzzle.
Doesn't
And yeah, and it changes the way, I mean, it's so pragmatic in the sense that it really changes the way you act in your life and how you receive things and how you feel about them. But it requires this complete opening up, and I think also patience, because I've been doing that work, for I don't know, I started doing it fairly regularly in June of 2018. So it hasn't even been a year yet, but you kind of start the process of forgiveness just for everything in your life, right? So this was introduced to me as a strategy for letting go and to moving to the next level. And I'm going, okay, well, I'm forgiving, I'm doing all the things, and where's my change, But it's not, you're not in control. So the most you can do is show up, be open, be receptive, but it's going to come when it's going to come, just like our stories, right?
Exactly.
You can't go, damn it, give me inspiration right now. I want to write this scene.
Exactly.
I want to return to what you were saying about intention. This is something that I find very powerful in my writing coaching work, actually, is helping people make a statement about who they are in their work. I find is often really transformative for how they do their work and for how they feel and how they show up in the world. When you have a clear message, and of course it changes and evolves and grows, but when you make a clear statement of intention, so it's like, I am somebody who helps people do this so they can get that, you get a charge, right? And I see this with the entrepreneurs I work with. They go, because I work with people who do very big, powerful work. And they often have the hardest time putting that into words.
Yes.
Words are tricky. They're lovely. I am a big fan, but they don't do everything. And there are some experiences it's really hard to translate into words. Now, of course, the benefit is if you can put them into words, more people will be able to get the inkling. It's like, oh, that's a sign I should go in that direction.
Exactly. They get that energetic charge that says, oh, this is where I'm supposed to go on my next step on the path.
Yeah, but I love that moment where a business owner gets her statement to a place that feels powerful, and she owns it and goes, oh yeah, I am a person who helps people do this so they can get that. Like, this feels so good. And that's part of an intention, right? It's how do I want to show up? I want to show up as this person who can help others in this way. So
absolutely. And it's all about the vibration, that charge that we're talking about that you get when you've connected with your purpose, you've connected with your flow, you've connected with divine source. It's like this little electrical charge that goes, an energy boost.
Yes.
And then life is so much more fun. It's easy and relaxed. And we've been talking about responsibility. And of course, that word means the ability to respond. So,
wait, you're just blowing my mind right now. Let me just have a moment with that. Wow.
so
That
we
is so lovely. Okay.
only respond to the level we're at. But then Spirit's intention is to take us to the next level. And it doesn't have to be a giant leap. Some people it happens that way, but for many of us, it's these incremental little steps that we take, and then all of a sudden we wake up one day and we've put in our 10,000 hours and we have mastery because we've just taken that next small step. The universe is so much more complicated than we can begin to comprehend. It's not even a universe because there's more than one world. It's a multiverse. How in the world can something as expansive and complicated be controlled by one person, right? Yeah. So it's freeing to let go because you're not a victim, you're not a slave, and you're not the master or the slave owner. You're a collaborator with divine source.
You're making me think of an organic farm where all of the microbes work with the nutrients in the soil, and then the farmer rotates crops and the chickens come and poop, and it's an ecosystem. Right. And you don't have to go to farming even. This happens naturally. This is the way the world is set up. There are these ecosystems, and no one organism is in control or is more important. They all do different things, and it's this beautiful choreographed dance. Yes. And no mind could come up with that. If you imagine trying to, well, actually we see the terrible results of people trying to coordinate it, right? We see in modern day farming, I think is a good example, and monoculture and, dousing everything in harmful chemicals. We see exactly this, what it looks like for a person or an organization to say, we will control this all. We will build it up from the bottom, and we're going to kill all of the stuff so we can reintroduce only the things we want there. Oh my gosh, you get disaster. You get utter disaster. And when we all just go in the dance, it works.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
Which is why trying to control all these different elements is impossible. So there's an element.
It's such a headache, right? That's so much work. Who would want to be in control of all of that?
It's horrible. They've made movies and written books about people that tried that, and it just never seems to work out to play God.
Yep.
On the other hand, when we collaborate with God, then we have fun. And part of the excitement that we've been talking about is seeing the lessons that we've learned reflected in somebody else's life, not by words, not by but just letting them be in the energy of who we are. And then they get it too. You get so much by absorbing it through the environment you're in. That's why when you're in a room with people that you absolutely adore, everybody gets high.
Yes.
There's this sense of connection, this sense of oneness. And when everybody in that room is working on a similar project, it's even more focused and more exciting. The whole concept that you are a mirror for me and I'm a mirror for you. So I'm working on myself, and my benefit from doing this work is that my life gets happier and happier. I have to go into the dark places, the heavy places, just to acknowledge them, but I don't have to live there. I can come up and say, oh man, I get to talk to Megan this afternoon. How cool is that? And it changes. It's a reframing. It's shifting your perspective.
Yeah, I have, I feel a lot more comfort going into the darker places now, because I have a very clear differentiation between wallowing and moving through.
Yes.
And do you have, are you familiar with the completion process?
No, not
It's
as.
a modality that I don't know anything about the history of it or where it came from, but it's a visualization modality to move through dark stuff and to kind of reimagine outcomes. So you journey back to something that is hurting you and you reclaim the power. And then
Mhm.
you move through it and you write a different ending for it. You would love it actually as a storyteller.
Well,
Um,
I haven't known that process under a particular name, but that is the process that I use
yeah,
all the time. I
yeah.
actually had an example of this yesterday. I was combing through an old flash drive, looking at writings from 20 years ago all the way
Oh,
to the
wow.
time. And there was one, it was a NaNoWriMo book, 2007, that I had forgotten I'd even written. And I started reading this, and it was a very difficult period in my life. That pain rose up, and it was like, oh my God, I've forgotten all about this because I don't,
Mm,
you know. And then feeling that charge, I began to process through it and remember this happened, but this was why it happened. And this was
yeah.
what I learned out of it. And look at how it's informed my life. And I'm so happy now. And it was a matter of maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, certainly not more than that, from going back into this painful emotional state to going into hot damn, look where I am. Oh, no.
Yeah, and you need to release those emotions, right? And you need to revisit them in order to release them if they didn't get released the first time around. And that's something that has, I think, been a really powerful, or maybe the last, I guess the last 3 years. I started really intensively in 2016 doing emotional freedom techniques, tapping.
Right.
And I feel like I grew in 1 year the level of 10 years, you know. And it was all to do with um, releasing
Mhm.
and still being in that vulnerability and that receptivity and that connection, but not being scared to acknowledge the scary things, the darker things, and then just letting them go. And each time you let them go, you feel them get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter until you just kind of go, okay, you're done. Send them away like Glinda's little pink balloon floating on the breeze. Um,
Exactly.
but but that is, I think that's part of too of relinquishing control, because when we're in control we go, oh no, nobody could ever hurt me because I am strong and I'm in control. And part of relinquishing control is going, oh, I did get hurt, and you know, thank you, I'm sorry, I love you, I forgive you, to the person and to yourself and to, you know, anything else you need to forgive and let go of. um, but it's, I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge, because sometimes I think there's a misconception that high vibration means always being positive,
Right. Which is
as opposed
impossible.
right, as opposed to clearing out the negative so that you have more room for the positive. I always think of the kids movie, the Lego movie, with the one character who goes, oh, I'll just be happy, I'll just put a smile on, and her suppressed rage at one point almost kills everybody because she explodes in anger and they're all on a ship together and the ship sinks because her
Yeah.
rage is so explosive. And you go, that's what happens if you try to stay happy, upbeat, positive all the time, which is different from staying in a high vibration or inviting yourself back to a high vibration when it dips.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we're all onions. We peel off one at a time,
Yeah.
and we probably are never done, but we don't have to live there anymore.
Yes.
And
I like that.
we've talked about forgiveness, and one of the things we have to do to hold our vibrations in connection with divine source is forgive ourselves.
Yes.
Forgive ourselves for who we used to be, for what we didn't know, for our reaction in a certain situation, because there were always the reasons that happened that way. And now we're different. So we don't need to look down on who we used to be just because we've grown to a better place.
Yes.